Okay, let's begin. I am Lanice Antoine Shelley, and I'll be your host through constructive, healing-based conversations designed to illuminate the adoptee, parents, and the adoption curious. We center the topics around community, mentorship, leadership, and healing, so you get a multi-dimensional view that is ultimately empowering. These are the voices who could not speak when they were young. Hey y'all, if you've seen me on Instagram, I'm in my summer glow phase and I am unapologetic about it. My hair is luscious. Fun fact, I didn't start properly treating and doing my own hair until I was a grown adult because like many Black adoptees, no one showed me how to do my own hair. And because I love you all so much, I'm going to share with you my hair secret. I'm always on the lookout for things you'd love and things that will enhance your well-being inside and out. We Unique Cosmetics sent me their Moisture Lock pomade and scalp and hair therapy oil from their Metamorphosis line, and it's so decadent, light, and nourishing, fam. This has become a hair routine staple. It has a soft lemongrass scent that people comment on when I walk by or when they're doing my hair because now I have boho locks. They also sent me a 15% discount link for you to try their products and hair tutorial service. And Unique Cosmetics is Black owned and operated by a mother and daughter duo dedicated to helping the adoptee community. Check out the link in the show notes. And this is for all ages, fam. So tell your friends. So come on, embark on a hair-loving journey with We Unique World. From interactive workshops to premium products, they're all about empowering you to embrace your unique hair journey. Because remember, all hair is good hair, especially when it's healthy. Hello, fam. Happy spring to you. How you doing? How's your heart? This week has been wild for me. I opened a show and started a new chapter of just acting again, which I love. This means I'm no longer producing theatrical productions, thank God. Producing is no joke and not for the faint of heart, especially in a pandemic. I'm happy to leave that to those who are called to it and be a free agent again. So, now I'm on a pilgrimage to realign, recenter, and reclaim my joy. My medicine of choice materialized this week. This weekend is an African dance conference, one I've missed every year since I moved to Chicago in 2009, and I am giddy with excitement that I can make these classes. On a whim, I attended a class last night. It was Congolese, which is my jam. I haven't danced in a class in 10 years. When I tell you this has the curative powers that my soul has been aching for, I am telling nothing but the truth. I was grinning the whole time. This is the nourishment that I've been seeking. So I'm about to dance all weekend and then spend the next week in an ice bath. Okay, here we go. Back on track. This season, I've been having my guests on Instagram Live for you to get to know them and me and the topics we're interested in. Those of you may know that I am an army of 1.5. Dr. Juliana Olsen-Deans helps me out sometimes when she can, which I deeply appreciate. Thank you, Juliana. But since it's just me most days, I'm slowly creeping up to having more of a social media presence that you can count on. My guest, Mindy Stern and I had a great chat on Instagram Live this past week. Check it out on @YoungAdoptee. We discuss how the impending doom of Roe v. Wade has an adverse effect on the adoption community. I want to also acknowledge that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Adoptees have the highest rate of suicides and overrepresentation in therapy. This is why this work is imperative. It's frightening times, y'all, so the best we can do is stay informed and connected. My guest, Mindy Stern, is a screenwriter and essayist extraordinaire. She and I instantly hit it off, and I've since added her to my roster of Sisters in Solidarity. Today's conversation covers the pernicious nature of the better life narrative that we all hear in adoption, for which she wrote a breathtaking essay on, and her experience with abortion. This is a good one, fam. Let's lean in and let's go. Well, I want to know all about the work that you're doing in the adoption community and your blog and all of it. So give us the rundown. What have you been up to?
So I first published an essay, adoption related, on Medium in 2017. It's no longer, that one is no longer out there. And it's no longer out there because I'm writing my memoir, the memoir of that. It's not just of my search, but specifically like how it started with this particular story. So I figured, don't leave it out there anymore because maybe people will one day buy my book. Yeah. But that story, which was basically about why I, as an adoptee, chose to have an abortion, which is, I think anytime a woman writes about her choice to have an abortion, it's potentially controversial, but for me, it's framed it's very, very narrowly framed. I wasn't ready at that time in my life, but also as an adoptee, absolutely could not bring someone, an unwanted life into this world. I felt like I, bore the wounds of that, being born that way too acutely. My wounds are still raw. I mean, they're, like all of us, I think. Right. So that essay though, got me some attention like that. I think the online adoptee community found me because of that essay. I did not even know it existed. Like I was still very much, I was not in reunion with my biological father yet. I had not found him. So that's 2017. And then sort of for a couple of years, 2 years, my writing on Medium, I was, I'm primarily a screenwriter. So I was still having screenwriting work, just living my life, mom, screenwriter, occasionally writing on Medium. But at that point, I had not written anything else about adoption. So that's 2017. And then in 2018. So a year went by. And then through 23andMe or an Ancestry DNA hit, I found my birth father. And also, let me just step back. Part of in that essay, I didn't know at the time I chose to have an abortion that my birth mother was also 23. So I was 23 when I became pregnant. She was 23 when she had me. At that time, again, I did not know, but she died at the age of 50, one day before my birthday. So my birthday is January 12th. She died on January 11th at 50 years old, 1995. So the essay puts everything in that frame. Like, so for me, the essay is, that essay was about like looking at what happened to her life also, because she had gave birth to a child and went through the trauma of relinquishing a child. And for me, she never had other children, never told anyone about my birth. And for me, it's like she couldn't take one more year of that day, right? Like that's how horrible it was for her. And so obviously all that material was in that one essay. So the adoptee community really found me and welcomed me, obviously. So a year later, so I was already connected to some people on Facebook and, whatever, social media was active in 2018. And I just randomly woke up one Sunday morning and found a first cousin match on Ancestry. And 2 hours later, I'd found my biological father. So then I wrote about that. And I wrote about that in the honeymoon phase of it. Because, he welcomed me. I have two half siblings. They welcomed me. And then the next big thing I wrote was in 2019, November of 2019, for Adoption Awareness Month. I wrote an essay called Adoption as Trauma. And that then sort of incorporates some of what I wrote in that very first essay. But then, of course, by then I had been in reunion for about 6 months. I had many angles to look at. I was living the complexity as an adoptee and reunion, and what happens when someone, the person you wanted most to find is dead, but what happens when the person you didn't think you'd ever find was alive, like just sort of all of that. And then that one went completely viral, and that got me, even further connected to the adoptee community. And then I think the next one I wrote was called is about the better life narrative, like why the better life narrative is harmful to adoptees. And interestingly, although I think the adoption is trauma, there are three. Adoption is trauma. Another one that was about like to adoptive parents, like a letter to adoptive parents, don't rewrite your child's history. And then the last one was about the better life narrative. And probably the one that is the most raw and the one that leaves me the most vulnerable is adoption is trauma. I write it very much about what it felt like to feel the primal wound. But that was not the hardest one to write, because I find it very easy to talk about my pain and to talk about sort of what I see as sort of, the primal wound that all of us have, no matter what came next, right? Like we all have different layers, obviously transracial adoptees, like there's layers upon layers, depending on what happened, depending on how your adoptive parents raised you. Were you raised in a loving home? Like, okay, so maybe you have the wound, but you don't have then, all the crap that comes on top of it if your adoptee family were bad and adoptive family was bad. Like, so, but I find it very easy to talk about and relate to adoptees about on that level. The other two were really a lot more about, it kind of involved my adoptive dad died 24 years ago this month. So none of this happened. I hadn't searched. I had non-identifying information, but I didn't, I didn't have the challenge of what would he feel or what would he think with finding people, because he had already died. And my mom, I describe it that she has a don't ask, don't tell policy. And I think that that's the best analogy, because it's like, a parent who says, of course I accept that my child is gay, but never ask them to bring a partner to Christmas, or never ask how they are. It's the same thing. It's like, oh, of course I support you, but like, really? Because maybe you'd want to ask me about the most intimate and important relationships in my life, other than my husband and children, whom she knows very well. So, that writing about kind of writing honestly about the broader issue, about sort of what that relationship, how reunion has complicated my relationship with my mom, was a lot harder, because she's my mom and I love her. I don't want her to feel bad about anything I write, but I'm also not going to sugarcoat anything. I feel like I have to speak my truth. And I think that it's probably why so many adoptees have responded to my work, is because I'm doing that. I'm not interested in making anybody, no matter who it is, more comfortable.
I'm the same way. And I'm fortunate enough to have a mother who's game for whatever truths come out of me.
That's awesome. My mom is now. I would say I should say that now. We did have a very heavy conversation about probably a year into my reunion, where I said like it's like the elephant in the room, and we need to talk more, and this is what I need from you. And she was able to say, this is why it's hard for me to give that to you. And there's just so much fear, and it's really heartbreaking. And I feel like I wish, like, if I could wave a magic wand and erasing all of adoption aside, like, sort of like keeping all families together with the support they need and deserve. Like, okay, that's like fantasy number one. But then, the next layer would be adoption in its current construct if open and closed ones, like if I could just make everybody's fear go away, where adoptive parents could feel safe enough and confident enough and connected enough to know that overwhelmingly, like if that's where they're coming from, their adopted child isn't going anywhere, even in reunion. Like we're only going somewhere when that's not where you're coming from.
Yes.
But when you're coming from that place of love and connection and safety and truth, like, your mom does, we need you. It's not only that we need you on our journey with us, we want you on our journey with us.
Yes.
Like that's like my dream is for my mom to meet my sisters and my father, and like they would love each other. It's just more love. Yeah. And, we grew up fractured and like, that expression, I think it's a Japanese expression about like the cracks are where the light come in. Yeah. Like, right. Like that's beautiful if we can have those pieces put together, even and show our cracks, but like at least, come together. And for birth mothers too, like for birth mothers who the trauma, when we find them, there's too much trauma for them and they reject us. That's fear and trauma. And if we could make that go away for them, if I could make that go away for them too, I would, if I could.
Well, as a writer, when was the moment that you started to write about adoption specifically? Or was that something that you always strove to do?
Well, I think, there's a couple of things. Looking back in my journals from college, like I was already writing about adoption then. I was journaling a lot about my feelings as an adoptee. I think that when the very first script I wrote was a fictionalized version of my search for my birth mother. And that screenplay, which I would never let anybody see now, I think I may have burned it. It's terrible writing. But it was actually, and I had only found my birth mother. I mean, I hadn't found my birth father. I mean, so much of the journey was incomplete. But that was the first script I wrote. I had written it as a short story, and showed it to some friends. I live in Los Angeles. So of course my writer friends are screenwriters predominantly. And a friend was like, this would be a fantastic screenplay. And I had always wanted, I'd never had the courage to pursue writing professionally. Although that was what I had always wanted to do. I had my master's in social work. And finally, when I was 40, which is 13 years ago, I decided to write that story. But it was fiction. It was not, my truth is decidedly in there, but I still didn't feel ready to write it as autobiography. I felt the need to couch it in fiction. But that got me a little bit of attention, actually. Some people in this town read it and were very encouraging of my writing. So then I went on and wrote lots of other things. I would say that even though none of the projects that I had optioned or was paid to write were explicitly about adoption, every one of them had someone who was searching for something. I mean, not in like, it's like the hero's journey, everybody's searching for something, but like you can read, anybody who knows that I'm an adoptee reading my work would probably see very much an adoptee in that work. But then it was, as I said, it was my writing, just my personal, it was actually after sort of taking a break from screenwriting and wondering if that was the path I was going to stay with or whether or not I wanted to write more long form. And I just started writing, blogging on Medium. And now I spent the last year writing my memoir, which is entirely about adoption.
Hey, I want to share with you something that has changed my life. It's more like someone, my therapist, Why is she so important? Well, because I want to win in this life. I want to break through the carousel of stories I've compiled that hold me back, that keep me from expanding into my full potentiality. Stories of unworthiness, not enoughness, and even stories of questioning why I am here. I also want to stop dumping my unsorted feelings on the people around me and reacting with the same behavioral patterns that keep me stuck. Conversations with my therapist have made me more confident, clearer in my intention, and more centered in my spirit. That is why I am elated that we are sponsored by BetterHelp, where you can, from wherever you happen to be right now, match with a therapist tailored to your exact needs. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. Someone who you can text at any time and schedule online for either a chat, Zoom, or phone call. And if it turns out that your therapist isn't the right fit, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional cost. Visit the link in the show notes, betterhelp.com, when they were young, to get 10% off the first month. You need to click the link in the show notes in order to get the 10% discount. I want to see you win, beloved. Let's do it together. Visit the link, betterhelp.com, when they were young. The better life narrative that you talked about in one of your essays, that is so important. Let's touch on that and your perspective on that.
That essay comes out of me confronting my mom about how she was handling my reunion. Because she asked me in her sadness, she said she was concerned that I regretted my life. And of course, I can't regret a choice that I had nothing to do with.
Exactly.
But to be honest is to say, you gave me things they couldn't give me, and you currently give me things they can't give me, and they can give me something that you can't give me.
Exactly.
And so what that means is that all I know for sure is that my life is different. I cannot possibly know that I had a better life. And I think there are probably the extreme Lifetime movie versions where we can say, for sure, adoption gave this person a better life, right? We all none of us make it through life unscathed, right? We all pay up front, down the line somehow. So possibly the wounds that adoption causes are less than the wounds that a child would have remaining in the biological family, right? So in some cases, that's true. But I think probably for the overwhelming majority of it, it's a trade-off. It's a trade-off of pros and cons. We would have perhaps had more material comfort, but less emotional safety. Right? I think we can come up with lots of scenarios for that.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's a forfeit and sacrifice in both scenarios, and people have to understand that. Even I, who came from an orphanage in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, understand that the life is not necessarily better, because we all define a happy life in a variety of ways, right? Because
exactly.
The forfeit for me was the fact that I did not grow up with my biological siblings. I have 3 of them. I lost Creole, my native tongue. I lost my culture. I lost a huge family. And now I have, if we're playing the comparison game, I have a smaller family. I have issues with identity. I have the trauma of a 4-year-old who was literally plucked from her culture and put into a suburban community in Northern California and said, no, this is your mother. This is your family. These are your friends. This is your language. And you will not grieve the past. And it wasn't that harsh or callous, right?
Sure.
But
And it's not even explicit.
Yeah, it's a
It's not
sacrifice.
always explicit. It's implied that you will not grieve because
Exactly.
you are to be grateful for, look at all that you have now. Who wouldn't want to live in the suburbs of Northern California as opposed to an orphanage? Like, I mean, that's what goes, I mean, the grateful trope goes along with the better life narrative.
Yeah.
Like they go together. And I think that in stories like yours, like you say it's so, it's simple and straightforward. And how could anybody challenge that? Yeah, we know they do all the time.
Yeah.
You know, but I think like something for me who was born, my birth, assuming that this is all true. My birth mother did not know she was pregnant, although she was a 23-year-old, very well-educated, sophisticated woman. Didn't know she was pregnant, went to the emergency room with a stomach ache and left, and I had a baby. Didn't tell anyone. Her brother was the only person supposedly who knew. And I was in foster care for 3 months and then adopted. So in 1968, although we know now they did know that it would cause problems. The public was sold a package that it wasn't, blank slate, and I was an infant, and how could anything matter, so on and so forth. But I feel like, similar to you, like I forfeited knowing who I looked like, and that was a huge thing through my life.
Exactly.
I forfeited having anything in common with anyone. I forfeited, in the case of my biological father, he is very clear that, his family was a very loving, very big extended family, with a very strong history. He would have, what he says is, he would have wanted to raise me if he knew about me. And he said his parents would have definitely taken me, like without, like, no question. And so that's for him. I was 50 when I found him. So for him to know that he forfeited, sacrificed, right? Like for both of us to know that. And, for me, something interesting was I was raised Jewish, conservative Jewish, in conservative Judaism, and told that both of my birth parents were Jewish. And my birth mother was definitely Jewish, although she got married in the Unitarian chapel at the UN to a man who wasn't Jewish. My husband's not Jewish. And on my own, I kind of left Judaism just for your thinking, and, my politics shifted, and really enjoyed going to the Unitarian church in my neighborhood, which a more humanistic approach. But my birth father, although genetically Jewish, like his father's side is Jewish. So my DNA shows up as 75% Jewish. His mom was not Jewish. She was raised Episcopalian. My kids went to an Episcopalian school. Again, all this predates my knowing him.
Yeah.
But also, like, his family's history, his great whomever was settled Savannah, Georgia. First white baby born in Georgia is my great grandfather. Sure, there were slave owners. His father, so my grandfather, left the family in Savannah. They had, all gone to Harvard. It was just this very illustrious family. And he never returned to the South because he became very active in the civil rights movement and, kind of cut himself from the family over those issues. And so to me, like, everything of my birth father's life validates, actually both of my parents, like, validates me. And, one thing I learned, like, I always loved fashion, and my adoptive mom, that's, not important to her. And when I met my birth mother's husband, he was telling me about her. So, he did not know about me, and she, had been dead for several years. And he said she loved fashion. She collected Yves Saint Laurent, which you can imagine I died. I was like, please tell me you saved me something, some little nugget, just anything.
Yes.
A sleeve, I'll take it.
Yes.
But something like that was life-changing, because that little issue was actually a big issue, because my mother, I think, perceived certain things as interests of mine, longings of mine, leanings of mine, as a rejection of her. And lo and behold, I wasn't rejecting her. I was just living my truth.
Exactly.
I was, there was a pull, and I went to it.
Yeah.
I didn't feel guilty. I never felt guilty. I probably, as a young child, there was the ways that you suppress or repress certain things as an adoptee, but certainly as an adult, that was not the case. I mean, I had no problem going towards my light.
And it's so important. I love that. No problem going towards your light. And as an adoptee, we have to be given that space and permission to go towards our light, right?
Totally.
And I cannot wait to read your memoir when it comes out. You have to come back and we'll talk about it, because I know it's going to be juicy. Your life sounds extraordinary. But I just want to know from you, a question that I ask all of my guests is, where in your life can you apply courage?
The true answer, just waking up every day.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, that's probably just the courage to face another day is probably the most honest answer. That's where I do apply it. Where can I apply it? I mean, I think it's conversations like this. It's being adoption specific. It's just having the courage to be out of the fog. It's just having the courage to talk about this and not be concerned what response I'm going to get, not care what response I'm going to get. Be able, as I'm sure you've experienced, most adoptees, especially in the online world, but even, all of us in our real lives, when we speak honestly about, I love, by the way, the language of forfeit and sacrifice. Thank you. When we speak about the forfeit and sacrifice, when we challenge the better life narrative, there's always the person who says, but you were raised so well, and aren't you so grateful? All of us are met with that, and just having the courage to push back on that and say, well, maybe, or, that doesn't matter. It doesn't negate how I feel, or whatever it is. And just having the courage to say that our pain is real, and our pain exists, and our pain can exist no matter how, our pain does exist, no matter how wonderfully we were raised, or what trappings of comfort we had, all of that.
I love that. I love how pure that answer was, and how eloquently put it was, because that's true. A lot of times for us, it's just getting up every day and challenging ourselves to show up for our lives. And that is enough, right?
That's right.
Yeah. But I thank you so much, Mindy, for this conversation.
So much for having me. I'm so honored, really. I'm so honored you asked me to come, that you found me, and thank you. And it's such important work. Thank you for doing it for our community.
Another beautiful episode. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to my guest today. If you liked this episode, the best way to support me and this work is to write an iTunes review, a 5-star review. This helps us reach the top of searches and helps more people to find us. And if you personally want to connect, please reach out on Instagram or Facebook. And I have some great resource material on my website at laniceantoineshelley.com. So go on over there too. Until next we meet, go gently and have courage, my love.